What is going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, back with another fantasy football stardom and situm, this time for week number 8 of the 2020 NFL season, helping you get to the fantasy playoffs. In this video, of course, I'm going to give you my favorite starts and sits at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and of course, defense positions and fantasy football, giving you the matchups to exploit and the matchups to fade, to stay away from. Before I give you the starts and sits for week 8 of the 2020 season, make sure you do spike the like button and subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you haven't already for more fantasy football starts and sits every week here on the Bottom Line View. Also, comment your questions. Let me know your fantasy football stardom and situm questions, your lineup questions, maybe even a trade question. Let me know your questions in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. I will be going live. You're probably watching this on Saturday. I'll be going live Saturday night to answer any questions you have. So if you can't make it Saturday night, make sure you do leave the questions in the comments and I will get to you. Or if you want to make sure your question is answered during that Saturday night video, then you can leave that question in the comment section below as well. Did not go live for the starts and sits. I want to try to do that as much as I possibly can, but this week I felt it would be better if I put the starts and sits out there and then answer the questions, a Q&A portion in a separate video. So this will be out on Saturday, but on Saturday night, I'll be going live to answer your fantasy questions for week 8 on Halloween. So let's get to those starts and sits for week number 8. Starting off, of course, as we always do, with the quarterback position. My fantasy starts at the quarterback position. Joe Burrow versus the Tennessee Titans. Only 2 teams in the league have allowed more touchdown passes per game than the Titans. Joe Burrow, 300 yards in 5 of his last 6, and he leads the NFL in passing attempts. This is a game that I believe the Titans will be up early. They'll be running the football, and that means Joe Burrow is going to have to throw his team in this game, meaning garbage fantasy points. You gotta love it. But for real, Joe Burrow is legit. He's getting better every week, and the Titans' defense is not very good. Ryan Tannehill versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, on the flip side, when the Titans can run the ball with Derrick Henry, it means a better game for Ryan Tannehill because this is a run it and play action off of it for deep shots kind of offense. The Bengals have given up a league-high 12 touchdown passes in the past month. That's to Phillip Rivers, Baker Mayfield, and Minshew. Tannehill is the best quarterback they've played in the last month plus. He should have a big day through the air, even if it's not through a lot of attempts. Jimmy Garoppolo versus Seattle, you could probably find him on your waiver wire. I would recommend pick him up, start him if you kind of don't really have a great matchup at your quarterback position because Seattle, well, they're the worst versus the quarterback position in football. They have allowed the most passing yards this season, over 400 total yards per contest to quarterbacks, including rushing. Jimmy G does not have to be great to be successful. Kyle Shanahan is a wizard, and Jimmy can thrive based on that. Carson Wentz versus the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, they just got rid of a starting corner, cut him. A starting defensive end, Everson Griffin, traded him. And a starting defensive tackle, Dontari Poe, cut him. So they're kind of in shambles on defense, let's just say. Carson Wentz has quietly been pretty good for fantasy recently. I would start him in this primetime contest. Wentz is going to ball. His first round pick is back. Fulgham is playing unreal. He should hit some big plays versus one of the worst defenses in football. My quarterback sits. Let's start off with Jared Goff. Now, do you remember who the defensive coordinator was? You see that picture, Jared Goff? In Super Bowl 53. It was Brian Flores. Brian Flores is now the coach of the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is a really weird spot for the Rams. Okay, so they're traveling across country. They've had a short week from a Monday Night Football game. The Dolphins are coming off a bye with an extra week of preparation. And Brian Flores knows how to slow down a Sean McVay offense. So while I still believe the Rams should win this game, I think it's going to be lower scoring. I think Flores' defense that is quietly thriving right now is going to give this Rams offense, specifically their passing offense, some issues. Big Ben Roethlisberger versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are allowing less than 1 touchdown per game to quarterbacks through the air. They match up really well versus Big Ben. They are chaotic up front. They can really get after the quarterback with creative blitzing schemes. And then they have the secondary to match up with the many targets that Big Ben has on this Pittsburgh offense. This is not a great matchup. I would fade Big Ben this week. Breeze versus Chicago. Breeze does not have Michael Thomas. He does not have Callaway. He does not have Sanders. I mean, all of his top-notch receivers are out. He really is going to have to make this a slug-it-out contest versus one of the best defenses in the league. Chicago is legit on defense, especially versus quarterbacks where they're the best this season for fantasy purposes. They've only allowed 5 touchdowns all season to opposing quarterbacks. Cam Newton versus the Buffalo Bills. Sean McDermott has mostly won this battle of wits between himself and Josh McDaniels over the past few years since McDermott has become that head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And Cam Newton, remember, McDermott is a Carolina guy, so he really does know Cam Newton quite well. I expect him to come in with a pretty good game plan to slow down Cam Newton, at least through the air. It may be difficult to hold the Patriot rushing attack on the ground, but I just don't see it with Cam. I mean, Edelman, Harry, both out. He was already lacking for weapons before. There's just not a huge ceiling in a game between these two teams that is typically very low scoring. My running back starts this week. Let's start off with Le'Veon Bell in a revenge game. The Jets allow the 7th most points to running backs this season. They are 20-point favorites, the Chiefs, in this game. So there's going to be plenty of time to give Le'Veon Bell the ball, let him have his revenge, maybe even 1, maybe even 2 touchdowns in a very favorable game script for the rushing attack of the Kansas City Chiefs. Mr. Scott versus the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys have actually been worse versus the run than the pass, and people continue to think it's vice versa, but that's actually mistaken. Dallas is number 30 in DVOA versus the run. Scott looked really good last week. This is another week where Sanders is out, and if this game, 11-point favorites here for the Eagles, becomes a game where the Eagles are up, Scott's going to see plenty of work. I already expect him to see plenty of work on the ground, possibly a touchdown here. He is definitely worth the start. Williams versus Minnesota. No Aaron Jones makes Williams a must start in a game where Green Bay will score a ton of points. He's a well-rounded running back. He can catch the football. He can run the football. Minnesota is a middle-of-the-pack defense versus the run. But considering that Green Bay could be up early, just as I'm saying with Bell and Scott, Williams should be able to really tee off in the running game. Green Bay is one of the best in terms of their scheme running the football, and they can really open up some big rushing lanes for Williams. I expect him to take full advantage of the workload. Damian Harris versus Buffalo. I understand, guys, New England's offense has been horrendous. But where they have been good this year has been running the football, and where Buffalo has been bad on defense has been stopping the run. Do you remember that Chiefs game? Well, I expect New England to run the ball 30 and maybe 40 or 50 times if they can. Because like I said, no Harry, no Edelman. I expect Cam to run the ball. I expect Harris to run the ball, Burkhead to run the ball, but especially their lead guy, and that is Damian Harris. Damian Harris is their lead ball carrier, and he's a pretty good one. I've been impressed with the limited snaps I've seen him play. And if the game script goes the way that it could, Harris could have a very underrated showing. If this game remains competitive, the Patriots will run the ball and run the ball a ton. So if you're in a half PPR league and a standard league, if he's on your waiver wire, you're desperate for a running back, or if he's on your bench and you're not sure about your matchups, Harris could actually be a guy that possibly wins you the week. But he could also be a guy that puts up a goose egg, right? Because if New England falls behind early, it's going to become James White time. But if you believe this game's going to be close, Harris should at least put up a decent game for you. The running back sits Ezekiel Elliott versus the Eagles. I know that sounds odd. I don't know if I've ever had Zeke as a running back sit ever. But the Eagles are stout versus the run. And given the quarterback situation, the offensive line situation, more importantly, which not enough people are talking about, Zeke has been horrendous. His confidence is all over the place. He's fumbling the football. And now he has a third string quarterback. I'm totally fading Zeke if I can. I understand a lot of people can't. But if you can, do it. J.K. Dobbins, you could throw in Gus the Bus as well here. They're a sit, okay? Pittsburgh is excellent versus the run. Now, I could see Lamar having a decent day running the ball because no Devin Bush would mean that speed to the edge will be effective. But right up the middle of the defense of Pittsburgh, that is where they're a problem. Hayward, those big dudes in the middle, right? Tuitt, those guys are going to stuff the run. And Dobbins is going to be the second in line for touches. Everyone's excited about Dobbins now that Ingram is hurt, but it's really Edwards who's been playing better football. I expect him to get more touches. That makes Dobbins for sure a sit, but given the matchup, I'd also make Edwards a sit as well. David Montgomery, now I'm in a position where in one of my leagues, and a couple of my leagues actually, I am starting Montgomery because I have no other choice. He's going to get touches. He's going to see the football in the passing game and the running game. So he's going to be a decent floor play regardless. But if you have the options, you can sit Montgomery this week because New Orleans is absolutely one of the better teams at stopping the run. 62.3 rushing yards per game to running backs this year and only 3.5 yards per carry. So the Saints still remain, even though their pass defense has been bad, their run defense is still top 5 in the league. DeAndre Swift versus the Colts. Swift looks really good in limited amount of touches. He's still not getting enough. I'd like to see more. Indianapolis is a good run defense. They commit a lot of players to the box, and that typically takes away explosive running plays. They love to have that strong safety in their run commit as well. And the Colts, they're top 5 versus running backs this season, and they get their key piece at middle linebacker back with Leonard. So that just makes it even more inefficient from a receiving game, given Leonard is so explosive and an athlete in the middle of that defense. So Swift, yes, you could start him based on touches and based on opportunity, but based on upside, I don't love the upside this week. Wide receiver starts. Travis Fulgham versus Dallas. The Cowboys have allowed the 5th most points to wide receivers. And man, Fulgham has been unbelievable. I mean, he has been historic thus far. And on Sunday Night Football, you know the kid wants to make a name for himself. So I see Carson Wentz going to him many times in this game, especially early on. Brandon Ayuk is a for sure start right now. No Deebo Samuel, and you're playing one of the worst secondaries in football right now, or one of the worst pass defenses in football. The thing with Ayuk is it doesn't even have to be about his talent, which he is talented, but Kyle Shanahan is going to funnel him the ball. He's going to give him the ball in the running game with jet touch passes and reverses and speed sweeps and screens. But you're also going to see him as their explosive downfield option. So Ayuk becomes multidimensional and effective for your fantasy lineup because he has a great floor, but also a very good ceiling in this matchup. Scotty Miller versus the Giants. Scotty Miller, just who is covering this guy? He is extremely underrated, maybe the most underrated downfield threat in football right now. He is consistently getting behind defenses and secondaries, and Brady is hitting him with absolute dots. So Scotty Miller with no Godwin, you expect to see him in 2 receiver sets, plus Bradbury's likely to line up on Mike Evans, which means Miller is going to draw an easier matchup. Now, I could see Tyler Johnson getting some work in the slot, but Miller should provide the big play once or twice in this game, so I like him if you need receiver help. Corey Davis versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals have given up the most fantasy points to Davis's primary side, where he lines up on the right side. So over the last month, this Bengals secondary has been torched on that right side. I expect William Jackson to be on A.J. Brown, which leaves Davis the easier matchup in this one, and Davis should take full advantage. My wide receiver sits Devontae Parker versus the Rams. Parker is dealing with a groin injury. He's facing a Rams defense that's conceded only the second fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. They're one of the best, quietly one of the best defenses versus the pass in the league. Plus, it's Jalen Ramsey, who's likely to be covering Parker. And this is a quarterback that we've never seen him play with. So there's just everything leading me to believe that Parker is extremely risky to start this week. So is Chase Claypool. Claypool just, with Juju, Deontay Johnson, his targets are very unreliable. The Ravens, they have Marlon Humphrey, they have Jimmy Smith, so they have big physical corners who can go one-on-one and take away the jump ball to Claypool. So I see Deontay Johnson, Eric Ebron being more effective in this game than Claypool or Juju. Amari Cooper versus the Eagles. Now, if you have to start Cooper because he does have a solid baseline, I would totally start him. But just don't expect a lot. He's being covered by Darius Slay, one of the 10 best corners in football. He's been shadowed by him before and not fared very well. Plus, he has an unproven quarterback. I would fade Cooper if I had the option. But if you want a guy that can provide you a floor, he should still be able to do that, especially if the Cowboys are losing in the third, fourth quarter, and they're having to pass themselves back into the game. Darius Slayton is somebody that I don't like this week. I don't necessarily think he's going to be awful because I do see a scenario where if the Giants are down by a lot, he could get some easy completions, easy yardage. But more often than not, he'll be covered by Carlton Davis, who's quietly one of the best corners in football right now, definitely top 10. And Daniel Jones is going to be under duress all game. This is a Giants team that gives up the most percentage of pressure per drop back in the league, and now they face the best defense in football with one of the best pass rushes in football. So Slayton is a guy that's mostly down the field. I expect Sterling Shepard to be more involved in this matchup because he'll have the easier one-on-one and he's closer to the line of scrimmage more often than not. I expect Slayton to be the one that's shadowed and the one that's taken out of the game from a wide receiver perspective. My tight end starts Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham has often appeared on this tight end start list because he is one of the top receivers of the football in this offense, and a limited offense at that. But, the Saints defense, they might have a good game here versus the Bears. But when you look at Graham's opportunity, no Allen Robinson, so that means more targets for him, especially in big scenarios like the red zone. And the Saints are bad versus tight ends. They are top 3 worst versus tight ends this season. They just don't have good linebacker play in coverage or really safety play right now. Graham looks really good, and I think he'll take advantage. Richard Rodgers versus the Cowboys. Now, this is assuming I don't believe Dallas Goedert will be suiting up, but Rodgers is interesting because this is a tight end funnel offense. This is an offense that gets the football, no matter who it is, to the tight end. So they're always startable. But this is a defense in Dallas that's allowed nearly 15 fantasy points per contest to the tight end. So Rodgers has a good matchup. He's in an offense that throws to the tight end, and he should put up a good day at a position that's very unreliable. So he's probably somebody, as long as he is the true starter in this game, that you can rely on. Mike Gesicki versus the Rams. Okay, so we got a rookie quarterback, right? And I said it's not good for Devontae Parker. But when you look at both the matchup and the quarterback, this is Tua. He gets the ball out quickly. He loves to throw underneath passes. Gesicki's a security blanket for him, potentially over the middle of the field. Tua's good over the middle of the field. He's accurate over the middle of the field. And the Rams defense is weaker in that area than on the outside. When you're talking about the great corner play of the Rams, you're not really talking about the great linebacker play. So Gesicki should see some mismatches here. The Rams rank the 10th worst in football versus tight ends. They've allowed the 4th most receptions. So Gesicki should have a pretty good game. My tight end sits. Evan Ingram versus Tampa Bay. Ingram has just not looked good. He just doesn't look like a great player right now. He doesn't look like he's hitting at all full cylinders, 100%. He's looking just off overall. And Tampa Bay has allowed the fewest yards per play this season of any defense across the league. So that means Ingram, when he catches it, he's going nowhere. Down the field, not going to happen. Plus, he's going to see a lot of Levante David, Devin White, Antoine Winfield Jr. is just not a good defense to be playing against if you're a tight end. TJ Hawkinson versus Indianapolis. Now, I've loved Hawkinson this year. I think he's been really solid for you. But the Colts, if you have another option, I'd lean towards that option because the Colts are really good versus tight ends. Like I said, Darius Leonard is back, so that only helps them. But they've allowed the least amount of points to the tight end position. 0 touchdowns, only 134 yards this season. Tyler Higbee. Now, he might not even play in this game, but if he does, do not start him. The Finns are the 4th best versus tight ends this year. Like I said, they'll have really being able to key on what they're doing in the passing game, given Brian Flores' experience versus Sean McVay. And Higbee's been very inconsistent. So it's not even a plus matchup. He is hurt. He is banged up. Definitely fade him if you have the opportunity, which you should, definitely. The defense starts. Kansas City versus the Jets. What do I have to say? They're 20-point favorites. They've actually been really good for fantasy. Pick sixes, returns. They've been very opportunistic. Plus sacks will be there in this game. I expect the Chiefs to have a big defensive performance. The Saints. Now, this is a defense that's underwhelming this season, but they play Chicago. No Allen Robinson, as I've mentioned before. So that's huge for them. Their offensive line is dreadful. And that's where the Saints are really good, is their defensive line, creating pressure with just 4, stopping the run. So they'll dominate the line of scrimmage. Nick Foles is definitely a guy that will throw the other team the football. I expect that to happen in this game. I expect the Saints to have their best defensive performance of the season thus far. And now a tricky under-the-radar one. If you're looking for a defense on the waiver wire, maybe you have a bye or maybe you don't love your matchup, Detroit is one that I'm intrigued by because they've been a lot better on defense. I'd argue as of late, they've been a borderline top 12, top 10 defense over the past 2-3 weeks. They play the Colts, who last season, Phillip Rivers did not fare well versus Patricia's defense. He only scored 10 points on the Lions defense last year. He went 21 for 36, and he had an interception, 0 touchdowns. So Rivers doesn't fare well versus the style of defense that the Lions typically play. They're in your face. They love to play man-to-man. While they've been getting to more zone coverage, maybe the return of Justin Coleman, potentially Desmond Trufant, allows them to play more man versus Rivers, who's older. He doesn't have the zip on the ball to throw into tight windows. I expect Detroit to actually play really well on defense. And I think this game's lower scoring than people expect. I think Detroit could turn the football over here. I actually like them as a sneaky defensive start and a waiver wire pickup if you need one. So those are my starts and sits for week number 8 of the 2020 fantasy season. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to Gronk spike that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more. fantasy. It's Mitch. Again, remember, comment your questions. I will be going live Saturday night to answer all of your questions. More on that in the community tab, so subscribe if you haven't already. And also on the Discord, link is in the description. If you join that Discord, you'll always be up to date on what's happening with this channel, when I'm going live, when I'm not going live, when my next video is out. So Discord's definitely a great community. You could chat in there. And you can ask other guys, probably not Durkant. You probably don't want to ask Ultra. You could ask Turtle. You could ask Busboy. Anybody in the Discord about your fantasy team, and I'm sure they'll help you out. Other than just me, you could get multiple opinions. We got 200 people in the Discord, so links in the description. It's a great way to get some different opinions on fantasy trades, fantasy starts, fantasy sits, and more. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Peace.